For today's project, I'll be showing you guys how I made this beautiful ottoman using an old paint bucket. If you're interested, keep on watching. First, I started by reusing this old paint bucket that I had made an ottoman with it earlier. I'll put the link in the description box of the ottoman that I had made earlier using this bucket. The inner part wasn't getting clean at all, so I had to just reuse it the way it is. At first, the bucket is not as straight as it should be all through, so I had to make sure the lower part of the bucket is balanced as the top part of the bucket. So I had to add a foam. This is a quarter inch, we call it a quarter-inch thick foam. So I had to cut to the size that I needed to cover the lower part of the paint bucket. By doing this, it will make sure the bucket is well balanced all through, starting from the top part to the lower part. To put the foam onto the plastic bucket, I had to use contact glue. I'll put the link in the description box of where you can get the contact glue. After adding the contact glue, I'd left it for about 5 minutes to let it dry before adding the foam onto the paint bucket. To my new subscribers and for those who are watching these videos for the first time in my YouTube channel, my name is Roxy Nimis. I normally do simple home decor DIYs. If you're interested in watching more of my videos, please don't forget to subscribe and also click on the notification bell so as to get notified whenever I post a new video. After adding the first layer of the foam, I went ahead and removed the excess foam all round using a pair of scissors. I wanted the thickness of this bucket to match as the top part, so I had to add another layer of the same foam all round so as to make sure my bucket is well balanced from the top to the bottom. So this is how my bucket turned out after adding the foam onto the top part and also the bottom part of the bucket. After that, I went ahead and took the measurement of the height of the bucket so as to guide me on to the next step. The height of my bucket was 34 centimeters, and the design that I wanted to make for my ottoman, I had to take the 34 centimeters and divided it by 3 because I needed to make 3 layers to add on top of this paint bucket. So for the next part, I used a 1/2 inch foam. So the first one that we had used was 1/4 inch, so this is 1/2 inch foam. Then I took the measurement that I needed for this foam, which will cover all round the paint bucket. The thickness of the foam that I used on this part was 4 inch, so that's 10 centimeters. In inches it's 4. Then made a line, then used my pair of scissors to cut the foam all through. This is how the foam turned out. So I used this foam to proceed to the next part of making the ottoman on my paint bucket. So I had to glue this 1/2 inch foam onto the first part, so I had to make sure the top part of the bucket flashes well together with the foam before adding the contact glue. Once I was done and made sure the foam fits in perfectly, I went ahead and used my contact glue to stick down the foam onto the top part of the paint bucket. And to my returning subscribers, I would love to say thank you so much guys for supporting Roxy Nimis. Continue supporting me through watching my videos and also sharing my videos with your friends and family. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share with your friends and family too. Thank you. had to make sure my foam flashes well perfectly all around the paint bucket, so as to make sure the decoration of this foam matches perfectly well as to the measurements that I had calculated earlier. Once I was done, I had to remove the excess foam using a pair of scissors and left it to dry. I did the same thing on the lower part of the bucket. I had to make sure the second foam flashes perfectly with the lower part of the bucket, so that foam should fit in perfectly at the middle part, so as to get me on distributing the opening equally. I had to take the measurements of the thickness or the opening thickness that I needed for this part of the ottoman. So it was 2 centimeters. The markings that I was making was 2 centimeters gap between the lower and the middle foam. After drawing the line, I went ahead and added the third foam by following the line that I had made earlier, so as to make sure the gappings in between the ottoman are equally distributed, or they are of the same size. After adding the 3 foams, this is how my ottoman turned out. As you can see, the lines are well distributed all around. So to secure my foam perfectly, I had to add some hot glue to secure the foam and to let the glue dry with time. Onto the inner part, I had to use an old pillowcase that I had at home just to cover the inner part. If you have maybe an extra linen or an extra fabric, you can use it to cover the inner part of your ottoman. Since I wanted my ottoman to have some storage, I had to add this old pillowcase so as to act as the cover of my inner part of the ottoman. On to the next part is adding the fabric all around my ottoman. So I had made some markings earlier so as to get the right size of fabric that I needed for this part. The place where I got the fabric, I'll put the contact in the description box if you're interested with a similar fabric. I got a white fabric for this part. Once I was done, I went ahead to stick down the fabric on the inner part of my ottoman. I had to use my staple gun to first secure the fabric all around before proceeding on to the next part. The fabric was a bit thick, so that's why you can see the inner part isn't well distributed in terms of holding the fabric. There are many creases on the inner parts because of the thickness of the fabric. This part is whereby I'll be making the separation of the design that I needed for this ottoman. So I had to use a piece of thread. I found this one was a bit short to hold the first line, so I went ahead and took a longer thread so as to make sure I'm able to tie this part well and secure it well so as to give me the shape that I needed for this part of my ottoman. So I had to tighten it so as to make sure the trenches or the space are well displayed for this design. I did the same thing onto the next line. I took a thread and I had to tie it and tighten so as to make sure the lines are displayed very well. On to the next part. was holding the excess fabric together or securing it under the side of the paint bucket. So I had to use my staple gun to secure the excess fabric onto the lower part of these old paint buckets. Due to high demand of people requesting if I can teach them these classes whereby they want to learn more of DIY classes, I'll start some online classes very soon. Once the classes are ready, I'll let you guys know, but soon you can check out my join button and see which classes will suit you. This is how the ottoman has turned out. So I proceeded to the next part. So this part is whereby you add some decoration on the ottoman. I used a gold strip which is 1/2 inch thick. It's a double-sided gold strip. The contact of where I got this gold strip, I'll put it also in the description box. It's self-adhesive, but I don't trust this glue, so I had to add some extra glue on it. And also it has a paper which protects the gold part. So once you have stick down the gold trim, you can always remove the protective film which protects the gold strip. I had to add hot glue so as to make sure the gold strip holds on well for a while, since I don't trust the self-adhesive strip. Yes, it can hold, but not for a longer time compared as to adding another glue on top. I did the same thing onto the second line of the ottoman, added hot glue and cut off the excess gold strip. I then proceeded to the next part, which was making the lid of my ottoman. I just had to use the lid of my bucket due to circles onto the foam that I had used earlier. This foam measures 1/2 inch thickness. So I had to draw 2 circles, then took my pair of scissors to cut the circles off. I then used the contact glue to stick down the 2 foams onto the lid of the paint buckets. The same fabric to make the covering of the top part of the ottoman. I had to try and cut the fabric in a circular shape so as to make it easier to stick it all around the foam. So I had to secure the fabric all around using hot glue because it was easier and fast. After that, I went ahead and added another fabric onto the side. So this is how I folded it to give that folding shape. So I had to fold the fabric, then used hot glue to secure the folded fabric. I did the same thing, added hot glue all around to secure the fabric onto the side. And this is how the top part of my ottoman turned out. I think because of not sewing the fabric, that's why you could see some few creases on this side. I then proceeded to the next part, which was making the legs of my ottoman. I had to use this wood, but I'll advise if you get some iron legs for the furniture, that will work well. So I had to use this wood to make the legs that I'll be fitting on this ottoman. After cutting, this is how the legs turned out. So I'll be gluing them down first using hot glue so as to secure them before drilling some pivot holes onto them to make it easier to add in screws. I had to paint my legs black, so that's how you can see they had changed the color. I used the black paint to paint them black. So I had to use longer screws so as to make sure the wooden legs are held well onto the paint bucket. And after adding the screws all round, this is how my ottoman turned out, and I'll be using this to store my baby's toys. I just love how it has turned out. And finally guys, this is the end look of my beautiful ottoman. Just made it using an old bucket, and this is how it has turned out. To make it more stable for sitting, you can remove the legs, or maybe you can use the iron legs so as to make it more stable to hold heavier weights while being seated on. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this simple transformation that I have just made using just an old paint bucket. Thank you so much guys for watching. If you really love this video, don't forget to give it a good thumbs up. And for those who haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe onto this channel, and also click on the notification bell so as to get notified whenever I post a new video. Bye bye. Don't forget to watch more of my videos at the end screen.